This is Force Gaming, for those of you that are maybe not familiar with him. But he came out with a video several days ago called "Why Is Every Game Dying?" I've not watched this video, but I have watched his videos in the past. He does a very good job of them. See you later, Kwai. Anyways, he's claiming that every game is dying, and I don't know if he's just talking about MMOs or like every game, but every game's dying. So all the games, nobody's playing any games anymore. Every game's dying. So I don't know what he is going on about here, but let's follow the gaming news. It seems like every game is dead or dying. Reports mass player count drops for nearly every new release. Since the games suck. Here, there. End of video. End of video. No real spectacular games are coming out. That's the problem. Hold on, let's watch this and see what this guy says.
Paying attention over the past couple of years to the world of video game reporting, you may have noticed a trend concerning the health of recent releases. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Halo Infinite Steam player count falls below Halo Master Chief Collection. Apex Legends revenue figures reveal massive drop in popularity. Star Wars Battlefront
So basically every game sucks.
player count
Star Wars Battlefront? Star Wars Battlefront has been poor for years. Like, what?
is poor, dominated by Fallout 4. New World has lost almost 90%.
See what I said, chat? New World, that's funny that he actually brought this one in. Has lost it's only lost 90% of its players since launch. Only. I thought it would have been higher than 90% actually. Like that's actually surprisingly good. Like I would have thought it would have been higher. Like I would have thought it would have been like 95 or something like that. Almost 95%. I didn't know that New World was doing that well.
Of its players since launch. Need I go on?
Let's just be honest. New World, I mean, New World's just an example of a really crappy game. Like, of course it's dying. What really good games have come out recently? Like, I mean, I don't really pay too much attention to the market outside of MMOs, so.
Yeah? Okay. Realm Royale lost about 95% of its player base. The Division player count has dropped 93%. For Honor now has 95% of its player base lost, worse than Division 1. Anthem's player count paints a very grim picture. Lost Ark peak players down 80%. Elden Ring concurrent players.
See, I haven't been paying much attention to Lost Ark because I have no interest in the game at all. But lost more than 80% from... Dude, dropped to... bot bans. Oh,
Player count has dropped dramatically, almost 90% losses. We are obsessed with concurrent player counts in games. Specifically, we're obsessed with how many people are leaving a game and how many people are still left. And it's not just games journalists and YouTubers looking to...
Remember what we were talking about in the last video where I said you want to make the world look like it's alive? That's why things like teleporting people to dungeons with Dungeon Finder, why flying mounts, like why it's actually bad for the game, because when the game looks like it's dead, people start talking about it as though it's dead, and then it snowballs out of control. So features in game that make the game feel less alive, such as layering and stuff like that, or whatever they have in retail, where, you know, remember when Blizzard used to tell people, oh, we layer people away from each other so that everyone can get the quest done? That is a load of crap. Okay, they layer people onto the same server to make it look like there's actually people playing the game. Why would you want to deliberately make it look like the game is dead? Like that sounds like garbage to me. But yeah.
Clickbait, although there is plenty of that for sure. But also, just go to the forums or Reddit page of any game released in the past few years, do a quick search, and you are guaranteed to find plenty of threads talking about the number of people leaving the game and raising the question, is this game dead? And if you were to base your opinion on these discussions, these articles, and these YouTube videos, the answer would always be yes, the game is dead.
It just doesn't seem to be any staying power for video games. Flavor of the month games, exactly. And they're banning bots. Don't ban bots, then the game looks busy, right? Remove AoE dungeon grind from leveling. Tower of Fantasy, you only see 10 people. Tower of Fantasy. Is that actually a game? Never even heard of it. It must be dead.
Every game, in fact, appears to be dead or dying. So, like, okay, what's going on here? Because that, you know, that doesn't make a lot of sense, right? Well, I think there
It released yesterday. Tower of Fantasy. Is this like an Asian MMO or something? It just the title sounds like an Asian MMO. I've never even heard of it, and I usually like to think that I'm pretty up with like new MMOs that could be really good that are coming out. That sounds like, I don't know.
There's a lot of different elements that go into this fixation on player count, but also many reasons why we continue to see example after example of new game comes out, is popular for a time, but then loses 70, 80, 90% of its players shortly thereafter. Some of the reasons are simple, like, people just stop playing games, but some of them are a little more complex. And one assumption that I just want to clear up immediately is this idea that player count decline is a direct indication of a bad game. Just no, it's not. It can be the consequence of a bad game if you release something that people are at first excited for, and then they jump in and realize it's not so great.
I like how he's showing New World. He's talking about this.
Yes, they will leave, and that is some of what is taking place here. But also, it doesn't matter if a game is total trash or if it's fantastic. Nearly every game actually will have a rather dramatic decline in player count eventually. There are, of course, some exceptions, games that come up and post-launch will steadily grow. Fortnite was one such a case. When Epic released the Battle Royale spin-off of their PvE Horde mode game in July 2017, not a lot of people were playing at first, but then in the following months it saw massive growth, becoming, at least for a time, one of the biggest games in the world. But these are outliers, and not every
For a time, was it not the biggest game? Are games dying quicker due to more people watching streams, or am I the only... Some of you tonight have said that you guys aren't even going to be playing Dragonflight. You'll just watch streamers play it instead. I think overall the gaming community is continuing to grow. I think the problem is, just throwing this out there, that there's not a lot of games that hold your attention. Like, when I started playing MMOs back in the day, you were addicted to Heroin Online. We called it Heroin Online instead of Ultima Online because you were playing it 16 hours a day for years. And it just doesn't feel like the games that come out now, like, they'll... So I've got like a stepbrother who's, I actually don't know how old he is. I think he's 16. Must be 16. Anyways, he plays a lot of first person shooter games, and he will go from, like, he plays Rust actually a lot. And when I was visiting my dad, he was playing Rust and he was PKing some people, and I was proud of the boy. He didn't know that I'm a gamer at all or a streamer, but I don't know that he's played Rust for very long, or if he flops back and forth between different games. But it doesn't seem like games come out anymore that hold people's attention for more than like a few weeks. So is that bad game development? Because if the game was really good and it held your attention, you wouldn't be leaving, right? So my dad has a 16-year-old stepson, yes.
free game can...
His wife is a little younger than he is, we'll say, and she had a child very later in her, childbearing years, I guess you could say. So yes.
Have Fortnite or Minecraft or vanilla World of Warcraft levels of post-launch growth. And even those that do inevitably see a decline as well. The record for largest peak player count ever recorded on Steam goes to PUBG. The game launched in March 2017, and then later that year in December reached a staggering peak of 3,236,000 concurrent players. Now today, it is down nearly 90%. Pathetic, right? Well, no, not actually.
It's not, though, because when PUBG came out, what else were people playing? H1Z1? Right? Like, I mean, it was the new thing on the market, and people are going from one new shiny toy to the next. So I don't understand why he's not, or why he's surprised that, that's just the nature of the market. People go from one game to the next as something new and shiny comes out, people jump and they go and try something else. So I'm not sure why he's surprised that games are having kind of a relatively short shelf life.
Because that still puts them at...
Maybe I should try out The Sims? No. No. Hey, Dylan, how's it going, man?
an average daily peak at roughly 350,000 concurrent players, which most days has PUBG still in the top 5 most played games on all of Steam. So percentages can be deceiving. Like, yes, it has dropped 90%, but 90% of the highest recorded player count on the platform ever is still a very large number. And while we don't
I've always wanted to actually play FPS games and actually try and get good at them, because I think they would be like really exciting. I'd just be like terrible at aim. In fact, I've played, I think it was PUBG on stream, and I played H1Z1 as well on stream. I think on my YouTube channel, I think there's some like old clips of me playing H1Z1. I'm terrible, man. Absolutely terrible.
Don't have Steam player count numbers for every game. We can use Google Trends as a barometer. As imperfect as this may be, it does give us a general sense of things. For example, take a look at Minecraft, which to date is the highest selling video game in the world ever. It peaked in popularity in July 2013, which was about 2 years after release. It then progressively dropped down to an 80% decline, which occurred in October 2018. And although it has started trending up since then, it is still at the moment a mere 50% what it was at its peak. We know from back when Blizzard published subscriber counts for World of Warcraft that game peaked at the end of Wrath of the Lich King in 2010. That was a solid 6 years of growth, which is very impressive, but ever since then it has been a downward slide. So as you can see, even with amazing games, even with some of the biggest, most popular titles in the world, they all follow the same trend of losing massive amounts of players over time. We just have example after example after example. In fact, I think a perfect recent showcase of this would be Elden Ring. While some people may argue otherwise, this is clearly a great game. It is no doubt going to make its way onto most top 10 lists this year, and it's also bound to rake in many Game of the Year awards as well. This should be...
I'm not sure why, like, H1Z1 was fun, but I'm not sure why this is a surprise to anyone. Who here likes pizza? Pizza might be one of my favorite foods. I absolutely love pizza, but eventually you're going to want to try something else. Eventually I'm going to want a steak, or I'm going to want a hamburger. So I'm not sure why there's a surprise that people go and try a game, they play it to death, and then eventually they're like, you know what? I want to try some McDonald's, or I want to try pizza, or I want to try, a hamburger. So, I mean, newsflash, people, their attention span to one particular thing will dwindle relatively quickly as they, do an activity over and over and over and over again.
One of those titles that we can all point to as one of the better games to come out in 2022. Nevertheless, there are currently a bunch of articles and YouTube videos pointing out the fact that the game has lost a significant number of players, which is an accurate observation. Elden Ring peaked at about 953,000 concurrent players on March 3rd, a week after it launched, and then a month later that dropped down to 450,000 peak, and as of today, it sits around 50,000 peak concurrent players, which is roughly a 95% decrease. Dead game, right? No, not a dead game. It's just a game that a lot of people played and then finished. Whether or not they completed the game or not, they played through it, they had their experience, and then they put it down, they moved on, as is the natural progression for most games. On the flip side, of course, though, we've got plenty of examples of bad games that see a decline in player count. But that's just my point. Great game or bad game, most games will see a decline. It's really just a matter of when. And for bad games, that decline is likely to happen a whole lot sooner. Okay, so now that we've established that this is going to happen no matter what, great games, crappy games, a decline is going to happen, what's with the fixation? Why do we keep talking about these massive percentage drops? Why is it always brought up? Why is it used to reference and call games dead games? Let me touch on this. There was recently an article posted on PC Gamer titled "Fixating on Player Counts and Dead Games is Making Gaming Worse." The main takeaway from this was pretty much that we care way too much about player counts, and we should instead just enjoy and play the games that we find fun, regardless of how many other people are playing. And I agree to an extent. Like, I agree that it
player counts have been stuff that people have paid attention to since like the early days of MMOs, of online gaming. So like when Ultima Online was out and it was like the big dog, and I think the maximum they only had like 100,000 subscribers or something like that. I'd have to look it up, but by today's standards, it was like really minuscule. Then a game called EverQuest came out and pretty much kicked its ass. And those of us that stuck with Ultima Online, I had never played original EverQuest ever once. All that people would talk about, well, not all, but a lot of what people would talk about is how the game was dead and so many more people had gone to play EverQuest and stuff like that. So this talk has been going on forever.
It shouldn't matter if there are 20,000 or 20 concurrent players in a particular game. If I am having a good time while I'm playing, that is what counts, right? Yes.
Part of the problem with what he just said, though, is like me, for example, I play MMOs because I like the social aspect of the game. And if I'm playing a game that's dead and I hardly see anyone, it's a problem. And that's why people are worried about it. If you play on a dead World of Warcraft server and there's hardly anyone around, it's hard for you to get groups. It's hard for you to raid. It makes the game not enjoyable. And that's why the numbers start to become a problem.
Of course. Back in the day when I went to my local Blockbuster to rent a copy of Metal Gear Solid, like a full 2 years after this released, I had no idea or care for how many other people were playing simultaneously. And had today's trend of reporting on percent player count drops been a thing back then, almost certainly I would have seen headlines in a magazine like Metal Gear Solid, massive flop, 99% player count decline. And had I let that influence me and not rented the game, I would have missed out on one of the best gaming experiences of my life. Similarly, today, had I seen a 90% player count decline in Elden Ring as a sign that people didn't like the game and not played it, I would have been doing myself a massive disservice. So I agree that we shouldn't let player count declines necessarily determine if we are interested and wanting to play a game. That should not be a primary factor. However, while I agree with that, there is a big distinction to be made between that kind of game and these online only or games as a service titles, because player counts and growth or decline tend to tell a bit of a different story and have different implications here, ones that are becoming ever more relevant for gamers as the years go on. Today's gaming
I just mentioned them.
is very different from back when I went to Blockbuster to rent Metal Gear Solid. In 2022, a large proportion of all of the new games coming out each and every year fall into the live service, games as a service, always online category. Games that require a constant internet connection and further support from the developer to get all of their content and to...
So if the reason, I think he's about to say is that if you are playing an online game and there's a significant decrease in player population, you're going to be worried that they're going to stop developing for that game or putting much focus on developing for the game because it's just not cost effective. I think that's probably what he's about to say. Do you have any old tech, Alodar, like retro games? I think I saw in my closet the other day that I've got the Age of Conan box. I've got like the collector's editions for like World of Warcraft and stuff like that, but I don't really have anything like an old Atari, ST or Atari 2600 or anything like that anymore. No. You still have your Atari 520 ST? I had a 1040 ST. I spent the extra $100 for the 1040. Okay. Age of Conan should have been a way better game than it was. Like honestly, it should have been way better. But anyways.
To even continue existing. They tend to follow a similar formula. They will launch with a base and promise continual support and additions over time. The game comes out, it is more or less incomplete with the promise of completion coming later on. There will be a roadmap of regular updates.
This is so true that games come out now completely unfinished. They've got bugs. Look at New World. They were forced to push it out. It comes out. It's got a bunch of bugs. It's not finished. And people are paying for the product. And then they go and start playing the game. And the game is not finished yet. And then people get pissed off and they leave before the game's even completed.
Seasons that will bring in new content.
Games as a service equals unfinished games. Well, I mean, when World of Warcraft comes out with Dragonflight, very first phase, and you paid for the expansion, is that an incomplete game? Because you've known since you played the first version of vanilla that they were going to come out with more content. Was it an incomplete game at that point? Like, should they have already come out with all the content right from day one?
Content and progression goals, weekly events to keep you coming back, so on and so on. This is the case in just about every genre. AAA FPS titles like Call of Duty, Apex Legends, and Overwatch. Looter shooters like Destiny, Division, and Warframe. You got the MOBAs, League of Legends, and Dota, MMOs, World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy XIV, ESO, Guild Wars 2, so on and so on. But even games and genres you might not expect, like some mostly single-player RPGs, turn-based games, card games. Nearly everything has become a live service that is tied to a server and promising that there will be more of the game to come. And for these titles, if there isn't an active player base spending money or new players buying the game to fund further development, update plans might get delayed or even canceled altogether. That content roadmap that they launched with, if not enough people bought and are playing the game, just forget about it. It might as well have been a hallucination. So when a new game launches and the player base tanks, there is a significant chance that promises the developer made about what the game will include later down the road, they are going to change. And for this reason, it is probably best not to purchase a game based on what is promised to come, but based on what is currently in the game. But it's also for that reason that I think players are so keenly interested and constantly talk about concurrent player counts. But not getting like some future promise updates or content patches or DLC or expansions, that's one thing. Even worse is games just getting shut down. Being a lifelong fan of MMOs, I have seen this a lot. Games that I've had an absolute blast playing over the years, like WildStar, Warhammer Online.
We talked about WildStar before. WildStar is one of the games I never played. I never actually cared to play the game. But I played, let's see, I played Ultima Online was my first MMO. Then I went to Shadowbane. Shadowbane survived 2 expansions, and then, but it was obvious a month after the initial launch, the game had so many bugs in it that I guarantee you it should be on this list. It probably lost 95% of its population in the first like 2 months. It was ridiculous. It was an amazing game with just a stupid amount of bugs and a ton of lag. Almost unplayable, but the actual gameplay itself is as much as the bugs and the lag annoyed you, was amazing. It was such a fun game to play. But it's now basically vaporware or something. I know some new company has purchased it, and they've recently put up a Shadowbane server. People have asked me if I would ever play it again, like people that I used to play. But I tried playing it once, like on a private server on stream once, and people were like, "What is this garbage?" So I never played it again. But I know WildStar's one. Age of Conan is still up and running somehow. And we played that on stream once a couple of years ago or something like that, before Classic came out, a few years ago now. And people were watching my stream that were in the game were like telling me about all these great things that they've done. But the game, the game itself it's too little too late. Like, yeah, maybe the game's way better now. But when people have that terrible taste in their mouth, they're not going to give it another chance.
Firefall, EverQuest Next Landmark, all of these and many more are dead. But not like LOL, the player base is dropping, haha, dead game, rip XD. No, like literally dead, as in they don't exist anymore. In most cases, of course, this happened because the game didn't have a large or active enough player base to fund and sustain the game's development. And yeah, this has been occurring in the MMO space for a long time. We are used to it. But recently, in the past few years, it has started to creep into other, more mainstream parts of gaming as these always on.
Is H1Z1 actually still being developed? They need to start paying more money for the developers, QA staff, customer support. That's the problem. Well, they need better games so that people, I mean, maybe that'll keep people around or whatever. But is H1Z1 still even being developed? I have no idea, actually. Because it was like a beta testing version of the game. Like, it wasn't even a completed version of the game, right? And they died because gaming is the worst paid industry. Yeah, but you know why it's the worst paid industry? Because so many people that are into computer programming want to be in gaming. So when you have that many people that are wanting to be in the gaming industry, Like they'll take a pay cut when they should be developing some other software that pays a lot more, right?
Online titles in other genres have reached the end of their financially viable to keep afloat cycle. Just last month, Ubisoft announced plans to shut down online services for 15 of their games. These include 5 Assassin's Creed titles, Far Cry 3, Splinter Cell Blacklist, Prince of Persia, The Forgotten Sands, and a handful of others. And we've seen some other very high-profile examples of games from big studios shutting down in recent years. Epic shut down Paragon in 2018. 2K shut down Evolve in 2018. 2K also shut down Battleborn in 2021. We saw Ubisoft shut down Hyperscape in 2022.
Is part of the problem maybe just that the market is just massively oversaturated with a lot of very similar games? Like if you're going to come out with a video game, it better be damn good.
There's also a long list of games that, while technically not shut down, might as well be. Valve's Artifact is a great example of this. I mean, it is as good as dead. And that's just covering some of the AAA examples from these massively successful developers and publishers that everyone knows about. The list of AA and indie and early access games that have just vanished from existence over these past 5 or so years, it is very large and it is ever growing. So when a game comes out and we see an immediate decline in players, I think that is a genuine cause of concern.
You know what's another like thing that I can't believe people actually do, and I did it once myself, I won't do it again, is Kickstarter. Like I can't believe I get where some people are like, you know what, I think this would be a good project. If you want to throw $50 at them, then by all means go ahead. But there's some Kickstarters that I've seen, and one called Crowfall that I actually put $150 towards it. And I can't remember if I did that. I think I did that when I had started streaming because I was like, this is amazing. This is the type of game I want to play. So I put in for $150. Never even downloaded the game. Never even downloaded the game. And you know why? Because they said that they were going to be doing a bunch of stuff. And then when I saw what their finished product was going to look like, I was like, I'm not even gonna waste my time on that. Like I knew it was $150 out of my pocket, but I was like, why make it worse? You know, like why make it worse by actually having to play it too? It looked absolutely terrible.
Concern for people. Is the game gonna not get the support that they're saying it's going to get? Or worse yet, is the game going to shut down? People are worried about this, and rightfully so. And along these same lines, when it comes to player count, it has something to say about the health of a game. Just like review scores and user scores, player count is another metric that people are using to help determine, is this game good and is it worth checking out? As we've covered, it is of course natural for people to stop playing every game eventually, but especially for games that are designed to be played over a longer period.
I mean, if the game's lost 90% of the player base, like in the first month or two, you can probably assume that a lot of it has to do with the fact that it's probably just a really bad game. I know that's not like maybe the whole picture, but if it's losing people that fast after the game's being launched, it probably has a lot to do with it just being a really terrible game.
Periods of time and built to be logged into every day, like the developer, the publisher, they are designing these games for people to come back day in and day out. How much and how quickly a player base drops in.
I'll never do Kickstarter again. If you're ever bored, if you're stream content, look up the $8 million game that was never made, Chronicles of Alodar. No, dude, I know about that game. No, I know about that game. Yeah, no, I hear you, man. I know about Chronicles of Alodar. Is that the one that was supposed to be the Ultima Online, like Ultima Online 2 or something like that? I think that was the one, wasn't it? It was supposed to be basically, there was one that was supposed to be basically based on Ultima Online with like updated graphics. And then like people were all excited that it was gonna be like Ultima Online 2 and it looked terrible. Yeah, the one time I did Kickstarter, the one time was with Crowfall. And I learned my lesson. I was like, no, I'm never doing this again. Like, never doing it again. Chronicles of Alodar, it was just a lie. Like, it was a big scam, right?
These titles is noteworthy and a clear indicator of an issue for...
Maybe it's not the Ultima Online that I was thinking of.
potential players. If a new MMO launches and loses 90% of its player base in a single month, that tells a story. It could be that the game is having a lot of server issues. People can't log in.
Okay, whatever. Server issues, whatever. If it's got really bad server issues, then let's be honest with New World, it was a lot of stuff. But a lot of it was just no end game. And people saw that there was no end game early on.
And so they stopped trying. It could be that the game is full of bugs.
I did buy Ashes of Creation. You're right, actually that's 2. So I did buy Ashes of Creation. That wasn't technically Kickstarter though. That was like you actually had to buy the game through their website. And a lot of that was donated through the stream so that I would play it. Ashes of Creation is still one that I'm actually excited about. I actually did download it and play it and actually was impressed. So we'll see how it turns out.
Bugs, glitchy, laggy, or it could be that it's simply not fun to play, and after giving it a shot, people quit.
I'm going to be honest, I actually enjoyed playing New World. But people didn't like watching it on stream, so I stopped playing it. I actually was having a decent time in New World. I think eventually I would have gotten bored. I hadn't gotten to that point yet. In fact, I know I would have been bored at this point because they don't have any end game. Like, the game's been out since, when did it come out? Like last September or October? It's been out almost a year. Basically a year now. They still don't have a raid. They still don't have a raid in their game. Like, you're talking about buying a game before it's like completed. Like, this game should never have been out. Like, this is, I don't know if it was Amazon Studios, Amazon Gaming Studios that, like, or whoever was, in charge, but somebody made the decision that we've got to release this game now instead of saying, you know what, this is going to piss people off, but we've got to wait another year. This game is way too messed up right now. We've got to wait another year. Because what's the worst that could happen? What, people are going to stop playing it? Pay attention to it? Like, they should have just come out and said, listen, there's way too many bugs right now. We've got to work on this stuff and do this right. Because you know what? I would have been disappointed because I was kind of looking forward to playing New World. I was looking way more forward to playing it when it was like a survival open world PvP game. But I was still looking forward to playing it. I would have been impressed with the fact that they owned up and said, you know what? It's not ready. It's not ready yet. We need to like put this on the shelf for 6 months. We know we've already done that for for the last year or whatever, but we want to come out with a proper game, and just kept plugging away at it because why not, right? Like, now look at New World. Like, I don't know what the population is, but it's pretty tiny. So the guy that promised Chronicles of Aldera basically bought pre-made textures for a few $1,000s and pocketed the rest of the money. He released the video to keep the hype up, but it looked terrible. Okay, now I remember the one. There was one that was supposed to be an Ultima Online 2 thing. Anyways, that's why you hire and pay good salaries to quality assurance game testers. Yeah, I remember when EverQuest 2 came out, they rushed and tried to release it when the weekend before WoW came out. I do remember that. I played WoW 2 or EverQuest 2 for a little bit, for like 3 weeks. I was bored out of my tree. And I think I was playing WoW at the same time or something like that.
Sooner than later. Or let's say we've got a game that comes out, numbers are strong, they grow even initially in the first couple of weeks, but then they start heavily declining after a month or two. This could be an indication that the late or the end game content is lacking. Player count
New
is
World,
just
for
one
example.
factor. Like, you don't get the entire story just by looking at these numbers. But if you take player count and you add in player experience, the discussion that's happening online around these games, then it starts to paint a picture of what the larger issues may be and what could be causing player decline beyond that natural drop that every game, even the best games in the world, all see. And that is interesting for the current as well as the potential players. And then there's just the fact that everything is vying for our attention and there is way too much of all of it. There are too many live services.
That's what we just said 5 minutes ago, right? Or 10 minutes ago, was that there's maybe an oversaturation of games and people keep going from one game to the next. Like, ooh, look at that shiny new. Oh, look at that shiny new toy. It's just one game to the next.
games that want us playing every day, all day. And with how gaming is at the moment, I think much of the fixation on active player count just stems from people not wanting to waste their time or their money. As much as you can just enjoy a game for what it is in the moment, there is a big draw for a lot of people to spend their time on something that will last. Like, I really enjoyed Firefall. It wasn't perfect, but I had fun playing over the course of a few years. Firefall no longer existing doesn't take away the fun that I had, but on the other hand, there's a functionally infinite number of games that I haven't played, more games than I will ever play in my lifetime that I could have played. So would my time have been better spent not on Firefall, but say playing Final Fantasy XIV? I don't know.
Got a question for you guys. How would you feel if, say, one day down the road, several years down the road, Blizzard announced that they're going to stop developing World of Warcraft and that they're going to take the servers down? And let's say that you'd already stopped playing for a year or two. Would you be upset? Like you've not played the game in a year or 2 years or whatever. Your account has not been paid up for a while. Would you be upset if Blizzard, we would go back to private servers? Okay.
Oh, maybe. Like with anything in life. Maybe.
Like something in the back of my head would be like, oh man, all those characters that I put all that work into, they're going to be gone forever. I'd be a little disappointed, even if I wasn't playing anymore. I'd be like, man, I've got a high warlord character on my account. And I even if I wasn't playing it anymore for a couple of years, I'd have that disappointment of, man, I'll never be able to see that character again. That would be maybe a little disappointing, knowing that I put in all that hard work and I'd never be able to actually just, maybe one day, 4 or 5 years down the road, maybe I'd be like, hey, look at, new expansion. Maybe I'll give this a try again. You'd know that you'd never going to have that opportunity again.
Making a decision to do one thing is a decision to not do literally everything else. So choosing to spend time playing one game means not spending that time playing any of the other games. That is just a fact of being alive and having to make choices. And I think with that, there is a natural fear people have to not want.
There, Findy, you can shut up now. Okay, Findy, you can shut up.
Want to spend their time doing something that they feel in the end was a waste. Although I don't believe that experiencing a game that gets shut down or loses further development and functionally becomes abandoned, I don't believe it becomes a waste if it's no longer playable, but I do understand the aversion. And like I said, there is a long list of factors that go into this fixation that we have with concurrent player counts and whether or not a game is dead or dying. And I imagine what we've touched on here is just one facet of the entire picture. And as more time passes and more great games release, all in competition with each other for our time, this isn't going to get any better. We are going to keep fixating on player counts, on discussions around forums and articles, all of this. This isn't 2004, when WoW came out and there were like 1 or 2 other good MMOs to potentially play. Nowadays, there are hundreds, if not thousands, if not
oversaturated,
hundreds of thousands of great games that we could just boot up right now and play instead. And that list will just keep on growing.
Here's the thing though, like what I was saying earlier, if you create a really good game, like that's got really good engaging content and like more than just a month's worth of content, players will stick around. Like I'm not playing other MMOs. Like I'm not running off and playing Final Fantasy because I'm just not interested in it. But I've got engaging content for me with World of Warcraft. And I think that's why a lot of people are playing TBC, and especially when we were playing vanilla and stuff like that, like it was really engaging and fun content and stuff like that. Whereas a lot of MMOs that come out now, you play them for a month, New World, for example, and then you're bored out of your tree because there's nothing to do. Like literally nothing to do. Or in the case of like Shadowlands or whatever, where content took forever to come out, people were like, well, okay, I'm not waiting around anymore. I'm going to go. Suddenly you've got Asmongold playing Final Fantasy, because he's probably bored out of his trees. Like, okay, it's been like 9 months since the last major patch, and, we've been doing the same raid for 9 months now. Okay, I'm going to go try playing Final Fantasy. New World was like 100 hours of content. I mean, that's just what I'm talking about though, right? Like if you gave people the actual content to do, and it was engaging, and it was new, and it was kept fresh by adding like more and exciting content at a decent pace. People would not have that moment where they're like, yeah, you know what, it's going to be like 3 months till the next raid comes out. I'm going to go play Final Fantasy, or I'm going to go play this, or I'm going to go play that.
Going with time. So there are tough decisions to be made, and looking at reviews and everything around games, and yes, looking at active player counts and noting their decline and how quick that decline happens. This is all factored into the decisions that we're making on what games to play and what games to spend our time on. And there you go. That is going to do it for this video. This was fun, a little bit different than my usual fare, but nevertheless.
Okay, good video. For those of you that aren't familiar with Force Gaming, he does a lot of gaming content, obviously. But for those of you watching on YouTube, I will put the link down below, of course. If you're not subscribed to him, you should be. Same as you guys on watching my stream. You guys can have the link as well. Overall, decent video. I think, like I said, though, there's so many games out there, though. It would be like, imagine, I'm trying to give a good example. Like video game, like the one I gave about pizza. I love pizza. I like to say that I would probably be able to eat pizza every meal for the rest of my life, but that's going to get boring. Even if it's my favorite meal, you're going to be like, eventually you're going to be like, you know what? I want to try this, something else. I want to try fried chicken, or I want to try, steak or something like that. You're going to want to try something else. And video games are no different, except that there's way more of them out there. Whereas back in the day, like when I first started playing Ultima Online, you had your choice between Ultima Online. I don't even know what else was out at the time. Because, I mean, EverQuest didn't come out for the first couple of years that Ultima Online was out. Like, everyone that you knew was playing Ultima Online. Now, if you have, like, say you've got 20 friends that are gamers, they're all playing different things. So you're jumping around. Whereas back when I started with Ultima Online, everybody was playing Ultima Online. Right? Like, yeah, Tibia and RuneScape. Okay. I think RuneScape actually, I think they came out after Ultima Online. But the point is, you didn't really have, there wasn't the choices, right? Everybody that I knew was playing Ultima Online. So, anyways, good video. Go watch his content. And also, if you're still watching my video on YouTube, please do me a favor, like and subscribe. It really does help me with the algorithm. I stream 6 nights a week from Tuesday till Sunday night at 9 p.m. Eastern until really late. For example, it's like 7 o'clock in the morning now. So when I say really late, really late. That's it for this video. We'll catch you guys in the next one. Take care. Have a good day.